Yes, yes. Good morning, good evening, good night. Greetings around the world. I am your leadership person to teach you wisdom. Yeah. So anyway, welcome aboard. We've got a call here today that hopefully will be useful to you. I see folks from Canada. I see folks wherever in the Philippines. I see Eastern Europe. It's very exciting. Did want to recognize really quickly a few folks just from seeing the activity report here on my little pad. Contacts overseas, David, let's see. David Neshev, yes, I should pronounce your name correctly someday. 204 contacts. Mark Smith, trainee, 191. And Nikolai Gitsov, 175. Chris Lorenzo, total bookings, 21. Rebecca Aguios, who is also a trainee, good job, 19. And Mark Smith with 14. So that's cool. Then I see all these activity points. I see Yana even listed twice. She had so many activity points. 236 was top of the charts. And then Karl was 218. And Gitas breaking into that top tier with 212 activity points. So stay active. And as you stay active, I would pay attention to this. This is our topic. Self-limiting statements. You must stop saying. That's it. Everybody jumps in, acts like they're taking notes. Good job. Self-limiting statements. You must stop telling yourself. We're going to cover that. That's part one. And then I also want to include the power of yet. Yet. Y-E-T. Yet. All right? So we're going to talk about what you say when you talk to yourself. Have you ever noticed what that conversation you're having all the time with yourself, even while someone's talking to you? Like while I'm speaking, your brain is working at least 4 times faster than I can speak. So you're having a conversation with yourself. So my encouragement today or tonight is that you watch your words. So that would be something to write down. Watch your words. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people give themselves a hard time by talking to themselves in harsh ways. And I've noticed this with some of the people that I have the opportunity to coach. It's totally normal. Maybe they had critical parents, they had teachers that were tough on them, they had coaches that maybe have led them to believe lots of negative things about themselves. So self-talk, unfortunately for a large number of people, consists of telling themselves what's wrong with them. Does anybody do that? Like you're really good at catching yourself doing things wrong? No one's raising their hand. Okay, fine. Don't participate. But you know, sometimes you'll catch yourself if you mess up a call, or you don't have the right tone on the phone, or you get blown off, you know, wherever you are, even in a meeting, if something doesn't go well, you walk out or hang up and you go, I'm stupid. Or I sound like a fool. That's just terrible. Or I'm having a horrible day. Or I've heard people say, I always manage to say the wrong thing. Now, in extreme cases, people, I haven't heard this much from LGFG folks, but I've heard people say, I'm a complete failure, which is a pretty strong statement when you consider it. That is a sweeping universalism. So those are all very self-defeating, self-limiting phrases. I mean, I've had coaching clients over the years whose main message to themselves was, you're such an idiot. You're such a total incompetent that you don't even deserve to be happy. And I mean, thankfully, I didn't receive that kind of programming as I grew up or wherever, but that would be a hard way to live your life, especially if you're in sales. I mean, if we're all in sales, if we're in the moving business, we're here to move people. We're here to be persuasive, but at the same time, we're beating ourselves up with negative self-talk. That just leads to anxiety, depression, and it can have other bad results. So if you've heard of, who's heard of self-fulfilling prophecies? Anyone heard that term? Self-fulfilling prophecies. Thank you, Revo. What that's about is that whatever you picture tends to come about oftentimes. You don't get what you want, you get what you picture. So if you start believing your own propaganda that's negative, it brings about what you fear. Like if you've got a client, you're like, oh my gosh, he's big time. I don't want to mess this up. There's a good chance he'll just blow me off when I call him because he has such a great title. Maybe I've heard stories about, you know, he's a difficult person to be with. Well, guess what? When you call him and you're a little off, he takes advantage, says, no thanks, get out, not interested. And you're like, oh, I knew that would happen. Well, you had determined that before you started. So I want us to watch our words. So I'm going to give you 4 or 5 different phrases that I hear people say that do not help them, okay? And I've heard this in all different sectors, not just in selling. Here's one. Stop saying my life is crazy. When people say, how are you? Crazy. I mean, I work with a team. I'm on a team at church, and there are about 6 to 8 people on it. Most of them, when I talk, they've got young kids, a lot of the women on the team, and they talk about what they don't want, literally. They affirm what they don't want. I say, hey, morning, how are you? They say, oh, I'm crazy. They walk in late. I'm crazy. And I'm like, dude. And I've actually stopped the meeting and said, okay, is that what you want? Do you want your life to be crazy? And they all just look at me like, what? No one says that. Because it's an understanding. It's cool to be crazy when you've got kids. Well, they're puzzled. They say, well, no. And I say, then why do you affirm what you don't want? When people ask me how, if I'm in that environment, I take the opposite tack. People say, oh man, my life, I had a lady say, I'm just running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I'm like, my life is easy. My head is intact and all is well. I'm pretty relaxed. So they hate me. But stop telling people that your life is busy and you're so hectic and oh my gosh, it's so, A, nobody cares. B, you're telling yourself what you don't want. So that's one phrase. Okay, here's another one. I don't have time. I don't have time. Stop saying that. Or I didn't have time. Everyone has enough time. We all have the exact same amount of time every week, right? For work, personal life, family, everything. But 2 things go wrong. Either, this is why you say, I didn't have time for that. You either overestimate your talent and you need a dose of humility to help you not overcommit so much. Or second, you're just into pleasing everybody. And that drives you, you say yes too much when you should say no. So that's why you can run out of time. So the next time you say yes to a task, here's what I would do. Set an appointment with your task. See, some of you, I don't have my phone up here. Some of you make a task list every day. You're like, oh, okay, here we go. I got to do this, or this week I got to do this. But there's no deadline. So make an appointment with your task just like you would a person, okay? If you were going to meet a person, you'd make special arrangements to be there on time and get it done. Same thing with a task. Put a deadline on it, okay? You'll have time. All right, number 3 saying, I would dump. And this reminds me of Star Wars. Stop saying, I'll try. I'll try. I've heard people do that. I'm like, well, here's a good suggestion that might help you with your time management. They go, oh, that's a good idea. I'll try. Like, what is Yoda? If you guys remember Star Wars, come on. What does Yoda say? There is no try, only do. He says, do or do not. Do or do not. There is no try. You know, I don't do the voice very well, but that's what he says. He says, it's this or that. Don't give yourself wiggle room. Just commit. Remember, and that's part of the 4 things that we talk about at meetings to be successful. Be on time, do what you say, finish what you start, say please and thank you. So one of those isn't say maybe and I'll try to get it done. That doesn't cut it if you're going to be a champion and a leader. Okay, so here's my point to that. This is number 4, but it ties right in. Stop saying I'll do it and then not follow through. Does everybody know people that say they're going to do something and then they don't do it? Anybody know somebody like that? Some of you are looking around going, yeah, it's right sitting beside me. No, don't become famous. Don't develop a reputation for not following through. If you say you're going to do something, do it. So yes or no. The Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more than that, evil. Don't even need it. So be very committed. All right, number 5. And here's the one I want to talk about. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the call. Stop running yourself down. Stop saying, I'm an idiot. Okay, some of you kind of do a variation on that theme. If you messed up a sale or you flubbed a phone call, you may say, I'm a moron. Okay, well, that's just as bad. Or some of you say, well, I don't say either of those. I say, I'm an imbecile. Okay, all that stuff. Dump it. Delete it. And I've heard people tell you, this is less severe, but I've heard people say, I'm no good at this. I can't do it. It's too hard. And even you hear rookies that are just getting started, the noobs will say, I'll never learn how to sell. Okay, when you hear your own kids say that, if anybody has kids, or if you do plan to have kids someday, your kids are going to give you great opportunities to become a good leader and a good coach. And your kids will teach you more about leadership and coaching than you'll ever learn from reading all the books that I sometimes recommend. So I remember when my kids were little, part of the challenge was that we would give them like they wanted to help, like cooking or something like that. And if my daughter was saying, I want to peel a potato, and you're like, oh, okay, here's something really sharp, and here's a potato. Good luck. And you're kind of worried, and they'll take a couple of whacks at it and then just go, I'm no good at this. You've seen kids do that. They sometimes give up easily. So the tendency as a coach or a parent is to have the gut reaction is just to counter it with, you are good at that. Yes, you can do that. Or you will learn how to read, or I believe in you, things like that. Those kind of outside affirmations are nice, but they don't work quite as well, especially if you're on your own in an office making calls, okay? So you can use those flipped affirmations, but what I would incorporate, if it makes sense, is to use the word yet, okay? This is where the word yet comes in from our opening title. The yet is a powerful word. If you say, I'm not good at this, if that's what your brain is telling you, you may not say it out loud if you're in an office with other people. That would be, difficult. But if you just think it, just say, I'm not good at this yet. Now you feel how it takes the sting out of that whole negative self-affirmation. It just tells your brain, you know what? You're not good quite yet. Totally fine, okay? Or I'll never learn how to sell. Well, I will learn how to sell yet. No, that doesn't make sense. But if you're, that didn't work. But if you told yourself something like, I'm not very effective on the phone yet, then it gives your brain a second chance and you don't just feel terrible, okay? Because if you feel good about yourself, you're going to perform better, all right? So this mentality of adding yet to phrases is really helpful. If you've ever studied anything from Tony Robbins, he uses some good, powerful questions using the word yet. Like he'll ask you to ask yourself, what's not perfect yet? What haven't I achieved yet? Okay? That kind of gives a little excitement and anticipation. If you're sitting there going, I'm never going to hit 40K, that's not a good phrase. You can say, I haven't learned how to hit 40K yet. That is a good little affirmation. You see the difference? It's tiny, but if you'll use that, you'll give yourself a fighting chance, okay? There's just good questions to flip things around. You want to turn things around. How can you try this a different way? You could ask yourself, how can I do this a different way? Hey, what I'm doing is not effective yet. So how can I try this a different way? Or what part of the job isn't making sense yet? Those are good questions because your brain gets out of, if your head is up your rear end, you need to pop it out and then look in a different direction. So that's what yet does for you, okay? Last night we were talking with the Hong Kong group in Australia, and when we finished the call, I just asked for comments, and Chendik sort of popped in, and he said, you know, this whole notion of what you tell yourself, what you say when you talk to yourself, that sort of programming or self-fulfilling prophecy is so powerful, because he said he was working with somebody, and right now in Hong Kong, it's getting really hot out. Summer is rapidly approaching, so it's 39, 40 degrees and, you know, kind of humid. So the person he was with was like, it's so hot, who's buying suits? Now that's a question like that implied no one will purchase suits in this kind of weather. It's so hot. So Chenda said, look, the first sale is in your mind. So his thought was, hey, you know what? Our clients today, they need a full line of summer suits. They need summer suits, something light, because they're going to sweat to death with the current wardrobe they have, right? So what you tell yourself in the present affects everything. He went in with that mentality, and guess what? The guy bought summer suits, and it worked. And his companion was amazed. So important. What you tell yourself in the present will affect what happens in the future. All right? So all I want you to remember from this last little portion of the call, you have to remember is the word yet. If you're coaching or managing people, I want you to empathize with them. If you're on a coaching call with me and you're having a tough time, I'm usually not saying, oh, you're frustrated. Well, that's too bad. You're kind of a loser. You shouldn't feel that way. That's non-empathy. All right? So if you're with somebody in office, empathize with them. I say, man, I know how frustrating it is to learn how to sell. This isn't an easy career by any means. You got to do the grind. So I'm going to empathize, let them know I know how they feel, and then turn it around with a good question or a yet question. All right? So I'm going to encourage you, before you get on the phone or before you get in to see a client live and in person, talk to yourself about past successes of times that you've really done well. Remind yourself or run a little streaming video in your head of times that you've overcome obstacles in your life, and that'll give you confidence. Think about times you felt good. And just as you felt good back then, whether it was doing great on a test in school way back when, you can feel good now if you remember that and get in the right state. Yup, you would call it frame of mind. So just as you overcame adversity then, you can do the same thing now. So a lot of what we're doing in LGFG is working in our own heads, right? Have you noticed that? The scripts are the same. A lot of the clients are the same. All the secretaries you need to work past, they're the same. But the challenge is, how can we stop saying self-limiting statements? How can we turn things around mentally and really watch our words? So avoid stuff like my life's crazy. Avoid stuff like I didn't have time. Avoid things like I'll try. Here's another one I'm just throwing in as a bonus because you're a good crowd and everyone seems to be awake. There's a woman that I teach in class. I'll see her tomorrow night, and she is late for class, and she gets penalized for it. She's like, I'm always late. One of my students, that's her affirmation. No matter how hard I try, I'm always late. I'm like, at some point, that's really going to cost you. Maybe your job. But that's just something she believes about herself. So that's a thing to change. So don't get into this whole notion of when you're not doing well to beat yourself up. I'm an idiot. I'm not good at this, blah, blah, blah. We need to flip it around. And I'm going to go into hopefully more detail from a great book called To Sell is Human on one of these calls, maybe even next week, and tell you how a different way to recast your mind to do well. All right? So when we hang up here in a minute, I'm going to ask you, if you're in a group, to talk about a couple questions. One question is, what of all those little statements I went through, which ones are relevant to you, if any, on statements you need to strike? And then second, what are some other statements that you would add to the stop saying list? Okay, because everybody's got their own little nuances or little variations on a theme. All right? So what statements can you relate to that you need to get rid of? And second, what are some other ones that we need to join in the stop saying list? Cool? All right. Questions, comments from the gallery? Anybody have a good example or a bad one? What the heck? Of self-talk that did not help you or how you changed it? I know Lor's on here and he's hiding now, but he would have good examples. Anything?
Was that? You know, I have good examples.
Yeah, do you have good ones? Have you made any changes mentally that turn things around?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, this is not the first time I've done that, but it is important to take a step back every once in a while and look at that. Like, what are you selling and saying to yourself? Like, when I'm listening to people's calls, it's this underlying thing that you can hear. Like, okay, he doesn't or she doesn't believe that the prospect is interested in meeting with them, so they will give them an easy out. And for myself, I have done that a lot. And then when I decide to like take a step back, think about that, how can I rephrase that it would benefit me? That's when things start getting better.
Yeah, great. How do you, let me just ask a follow-up real quick. What do you hear in someone's voice that gives you the impression that what's going on in their head isn't helping them?
Well, for example, if they finish a call, okay, I'm not gonna waste your time any further or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not good.
So do you want to meet with me or not so much if it's the first close? Like, come on.
Yeah, good. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Nothing like putting somebody on the spot to get the conversation going. So thank you for that. Anyway, well, think about that this week. If you need to, if you have friends who are suffering from this, we're going to send out the recording. Momik's going to send our recording of this call out and listen to it again or pass it on to somebody that wasn't here. And let's keep patching up our self-talk. Always a good exercise. So thank you for tuning in. Have a pleasant week. Work hard. Let's keep winning. All right? Signing off.